Hello, everybody. This is Zach Said It Again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I'm honored to have with me on the phone today the executive director of the Millwald Theater, Donnie Bales. Thank you so much, Donnie,
Hi,
for being
Zach.
on the podcast.
Oh, of course, you're so welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it's certainly been a pleasure to work with you and promote things at the Millwald, and you've certainly given me some of the greatest opportunities of my career to be able to interview rock and roll legends like Jim Messina and Rodney Justo, the lead singer of the Atlanta Rhythm Section. That certainly has been a great gift to me, in addition to being able to uh, see all the wonderful acts that you brought to the Millwald since its restoration 3 years ago. With to get to see my friend Colin Mockery. I had interviewed him several times, and for him to be able to come to my hometown theater, I never thought that I would see that, but he actually came, and that was one of the most memorable evenings of my life for my family and me. So I really want to thank you
Oh,
for that opportunity, especially.
well, thank you for saying that. That's so kind of you. And you help us out so much with getting the word out and all of your great articles on the Millwall. I think it really tells the story of what the Millwall, firsthand experience of what the Millwall is like. And every artist that we have had come through just glows about how much they love talking to you. And so we want to thank you. You're definitely part of the Millwall family. And it really makes me so happy to hear folks like yourself to just be so excited about someone like Colin Mockery coming to the Millwall, because that's what it's all about. I always say that we deserve art in our backyard too. So we shouldn't have to drive to a big city or travel at least an hour away to see these kinds of acts. We should be able to see them right here in Wytheville. So thank you.
Well, it is my pleasure, and as I said, the great joy of my career and family life to be able to bring. My daughter is 11 years old, and she will be able to tell her children and grandchildren that she saw people like Colin Mockery, because I guarantee you, Whose Line Is It Anyway is still going to be on TV, 20, 30 years from now. So that, and, to be able to introduce her to great entertainment, like she loves the Beatles, and when you had Brit Beat come, that was my wife and daughter are both lifelong Beatle fans, and I have been since I married my wife 15 years ago. So getting to see
Congrats.
that thank you very much. 15 years in July, I'm very proud of that. Yeah. So
Wow. Well,
and
that's great. We're
yeah.
always happy to hear about young audiences coming in, and we're certainly that's part of our programming strategy is how do we get the next generation in. So I'm very happy to hear that your daughter's enjoying it as well.
Yeah, and speaking of great couples, you and Allie are a wonderful couple. Allie
Oh, thank you.
is how many years for you and Allie, if I can ask?
We just celebrated 10 last year.
Oh,
So
great.
she'd probably tell you it feels more like 15 or 20, but no, I'm kidding. So
Nah,
we
I
just
doubt that.
celebrated 10 last year, and we're getting ready to celebrate number 11. Just a couple days from now. So
Oh,
about a week.
congratulations to you then.
Oh, thank you.
Did you
Yeah.
do anything big for the 10th?
We did. We went to Europe. It's always been a bucket trip list for Allie, both Allie and I, and so we did a tour of England and Ireland and Scotland, and I think it's my favorite trip I've ever been on. So, and it was right around her birthday as well. So that one will be hard to beat.
Well, that's a bucket list for my wife too, to be able to go to Europe at some point. We always have to watch out for places that are wheelchair accessible and places that are not, because we've spent the money to travel and then not be able to do certain things. So, I'm very nervous about traveling abroad personally, but I'm just happy to get to go to Disney World every couple of years. That is.
Well, they'll take you as well, I'm sure. We just got back from there. That's Allie's favorite place.
Yep, and Lord willing, we'll be going at the end of May. My mother is kind enough to have made that happen for us all, so it will be
nice.
let's see, that will be my 5th trip to Disney, 3rd trip with my wife and daughter, so we're excited about that. But
amazing! I know you're going to have a great time.
As it always is, when I get into conversations, I get off on different tangents and never finish what I'm supposed to do. So we are here to talk about a very special event that the Millwald is having, but it's not actually at the Millwald Theater itself. Last Christmas, you had 4 members of the Roanoke Symphony Orchestra's chamber music for a holiday pops concert, which was a great part of our holiday season last year as a family, and we'll be having that again this Christmas. But I remember thinking at that time, what a treat it would be to have the entire orchestra there, because I've never seen the Roanoke Symphony Orchestra. So of course the Millwald Theater can't accommodate that whole entire orchestra. So you have partnered with Elizabeth Brown Park to bring us Roanoke Symphony Orchestra Under the Stars. Can you tell us about how that came about, getting that together, and then what it's going to entail for the show?
Yes, and thank you for that context. And I should mention, so last year was a brass quintet, and obviously, this is the entire orchestra. It's been amazing to me when I moved from Charlotte to Wytheville, how hungry the community is for symphonic music. And funny enough, one of our board members and some community groups, mostly from Rural Retreat, were already working with the symphony. They brought them down for a tour way before I ever got here. And so it was kind of a partnership in the making that just needed some more attention to it. And they were already interested. And so, there's always challenges with getting an entire orchestra on a stage. And so we kind of tested the waters, I think, a little bit with the brass quintet, the 2 concerts that we had in 24 and 23, and that did really, really well, and the community was so happy. And like yourself, I thought, gosh, I would really love to bring symphonic music, the entire orchestra, to the community, because I don't know about you, Zach, but I did not see an orchestra event until I was in maybe my 30s. I grew up in Marion and from small beginnings, and we just didn't really travel out to go to things, which is part of why the Millwald has such a mission of bringing in these kinds of acts to the local area, because we want to reduce that barrier to entry. We want folks in our community to be able to experience the symphony without leaving their backyard, so to speak. So that partnership was already kind of in the making, and we brought the brass quintet. The symphony had a great time. Our community loved it. And so myself and the executive director of the symphony have been talking about how do we take this partnership even further, because clearly the community wants it. And so it was about that, and it's also about the Millwald. I always see is an arts organization instead of a brick and mortar place, if that makes sense.
I understand. Millwald Incorporated.
We're trying to do some different things. In terms of we're bringing a lot more education. We're doing things out in the community, especially with our Millwald Ticks. ticketing for different venues and so on and so forth. And so we really want to try to bring a different experience for folks. And so, we got to thinking about the park, and I'm certainly used to in Charlotte, you would go to these massive concerts out in the park, and we have this beautiful space, as you know, right behind the theater at Elizabeth Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And so luckily we got in touch with Parks and Rec, and they were so excited about the idea of having the symphony there, and so they've partnered with us. And what folks can expect is we have 3 different sections. We have Beyond the Bridge, and that one I believe might be sold out, but it's we wanted to make sure that we had a free ticket for folks, again, just to reduce that barrier. But that's essentially, it's more for passersby, if you're walking by, or you can sit kind of on the lawn like you do in Chautauqua right before the bridge. And then we have a big section, the Allegro lawn, which you'll bring a lawn chair. And we have a VIP seating, which is called the Conductor Circle. And we're going to be putting reserved seating down there in front of the stage. And to your point, this is the first time the Roanoke Symphony, the entire orchestra, with their maestro, David Stewart Wiley, is going to be there. So it's going to be a really great experience that Whitfield just hasn't seen before.
Absolutely. And it was an excellent point that you brought up, and I'm glad you corrected me on that the Millwald Theater is not just a brick and mortar place. You're looking at Millwald Incorporated instead of just thinking of Millwald as the building. And out of my romanticism for the Millwald Theater itself, and, living in Wytheville all my life, and so many core childhood memories revolving around seeing those great Disney movies. When Eisner was president of Disney, he re-released all those old classics from the 50s and 60s and further back even. He re-released them in the late 80s and early 90s, so I can remember going to see my favorite memory that I share is when 101 Dalmatians was re-released. My sister had just been born, and she was about 6 months old, and all the attention had been on the baby, and they had brought my great grandmother up, and they said, well, Mom said, I want to go see Dying Young, starring Julia Roberts, and which you've restored it beautifully, the balcony. But when I was growing up, the balcony was a separate theater that was upstairs.
Right, I remember that.
And so she went upstairs to see Dying Young. And my great-grandmother and I went downstairs. Thank God the cartoon one was downstairs to see 101 Dalmatians. Now, I had been given a lecture by my mother not to talk, not to speak, not to laugh too loud, to be respectful of other people in the theater. Well, Granny Rose and I were the only two in the theater. And we sat there and laughed our butts off the whole time. So that remains that remains to this day my favorite Disney movie, and a very core memory.
Well, that's so funny that you bring that up, particularly that movie and that space. I think I've mentioned I grew up in Marion, and
Yep.
Funny enough, the very first movie I went to was 101 Dalmatians at the Millwald. And it sparked this lifelong love for movies and movie theaters, and clearly, going into event management. But that is just an experience I'll never forget, walking in for the first time and just being transported to a different world.
What year was that? Because I went in July of 1991.
I would imagine it was around the same time, and that tracked, because I was thinking I was maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time.
Wow. How about that, man? we were the 101 Dalmatians thing. I think I just I don't know about you, but I felt a bond click there when that was
for sure.
that was your first movie, and it was the one I remember the most at the Millwald. I can remember so many things. 3 years old. But my mother was a wonderful movie buff. She grew up at the Millwald. That was her escape. In in the 70s and 80s, but I mean back in those days it was a family event when a Disney movie came out. The whole family went. There was 4 of us, and we were going all in 4 different directions, but we would all come together when a new Disney movie would come out or a new Muppet movie would come out. I remember A Christmas Carol is my favorite story of all time. And when we did the Muppet Christmas Carol, I remember it was just me and my mom, and we went to see that, and we had many, many moments like that. She took me to see Mrs. Doubtfire. I'll never forget that. Just so many great movies and things that define my childhood. But again, I'm getting so derailed because I love to talk.
No worries.
I love to talk about the Millwald, but that 101 Dalmatians thing, I don't know. We may have to raise some money and have a screening of 101 Dalmatians just for us, since we have that.
There you go.
Since we have that bond. But you grew up in Marion, and you went to 101 Dalmatians, your first movie here at the Millwald. So how did you wind up then at Blumenthal, one of the preeminent venues of Charlotte, North Carolina? I'll be going there in October to see Wicked. So as you know, I cover the arts here and otherwise in my column, as I have for the last 20 years. And to see these quality shows, you do have to go to farther away places like the Roanoke Civic Center or the Blumenthal, or places like that. And the fact that we had, when I heard you were coming from Blumenthal, I thought, man, we're getting the cream of the crop here. So tell me about how you went from Marion to the Blumenthal, and then how we were lucky enough to get you back here.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. And I remember when your articles came out about when you would visit Blumenthal. I think that was my introduction to learning about you before we had a chance to meet.
Right.
So I've always been interested in theater, and I think my 2 core memories that kind of got me involved were the 101 Dalmatians at the Millwald, and then I was lucky enough to, my grandmother, it was very important to her that I had experienced an introduction to the arts, I guess I should say. And I'll never forget going to the Barter Theater to see Jack and the Beanstalk. And I think having those 2 experiences just made me obsessed with theaters in general. And so I always wanted to be an actor when I was younger. So that's kind of how my career got started. I was acting, and that's where I met Allie. Her and I were working out at a theater in Colorado together. And we moved to Withville. Allie started working at the Wofford House, and I did as well. She was acting, and I started to think that, I loved the theater, but there was something, I hadn't quite found my place yet. And I didn't think it was on stage anymore. And so I started working in the technical field. I was the sound designer there for a long time, and loved that. But I still didn't know that was quite where I was going to land, where my career was headed. And so I started thinking about going back to school. And I found out that Virginia Tech has this amazing arts leadership master's program. and I applied and got in, and still, knowing that I wanted to do something in the arts at a higher level, but I still had no idea what that was. But I just knew that maybe if I was around like-minded individuals and learning about a lot of different things, that would kind of lead me there, which thankfully it did. And so I started going to Virginia Tech, and during my second year, I started working at the Moss Arts Center, and that is also a presenting organization. And for those who aren't familiar with the difference, something like the Wofford House or the Barter Theater is what you would call a producing organization. They bring in actors, they rehearse, they put on their productions. Something like Blumenthal or the Millwald or the Moss Arts Center, we are what's called a presenting organization, where we bring in tours or we'll bring in comedians or things like that. So that's the difference. And having never worked at a presenting organization, my brain is I like variety. Mm-hmm. And so that's when it kind of clicked for me that was kind of, I loved having, different events every week. And as part of my requirement for my master's, we were required to go somewhere on internship during my third year. And Allie, funny enough, I was looking for a programming internship because at the time I thought, I think I really want my career to where I'm programming artists. And so I could not find anywhere. And Allie, funny enough, my wife, found Blumenthal. And we had been there before to see some concerts. And it's funny, I remember visiting and I said, gosh, wouldn't it be so cool to work here one day? But Allie said, oh my gosh, Blumenthal has an internship that you can do. And luckily I was accepted into their programming department. And so I think I started my internship in 2019 and was all set to graduate May of 2020. And we all know what happened that year. And luckily Blumenthal just never let me leave, which I was so thankful. They said, we'd love to have you stay on. And so I worked in their programming department and managed their rental department. And funny enough, one of my biggest clients was the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra. So, certainly having history with orchestras and what that does for communities. And so, kind of similar again, I was like, this has been really great and a really great learning opportunity, but I think I'm kind of ready for the next step. And a community member here had let me know that the position for the executive director was open, and went through a long application process, and here I am. So.
And do you feel this is a permanent stay for you?
I love it here. I really do. I love my job. I love the Millwald. I really love the community. In fact, one of my favorite things is hearing from folks such as yourself about your favorite memories there. It's kind of one of my favorite that we'll bring in high school reunions from time to time, and they'll come in and talk about, when they saw this or that at the Millwall, and it just brings me so much joy. So I've really enjoyed coming here and in this position and really kind of helping mold the theater to what it is today. And certainly our goal is to push it as far as we possibly can. So I have nothing but joy being here.
Do you feel, Donnie, that it is a different thing because you were booking major acts? Blumenthal has people like, Colin Mockery, which you got here. I don't know if Vicki ever performed there, but we've talked about Vicki Lawrence. Diana Ross played at Blumenthal, and I think it maybe is playing there again next month or something.
It sure is, yeah.
And how is that to booking? Was it an adjustment when you, because obviously, we couldn't afford Diana Ross, obviously, even at 81.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a fair question. And it's a little bit of a twofold answer. And one, I guess, yeah, certainly, I was working on major Broadways and managing, I think, 4 venues. Because we had, in Charlotte, we had a 2,500 seat venue, which is the Belk, and we had a night theater, I think is 1,100 seats, and we had 2 smaller theaters. And funny enough, one of the theaters, Booth Playhouse, has 444 seats, which is in similar size to the Millwald. Millwald has 512 seats. And so some of that certainly was not necessarily an adjustment in budget, certainly, but the process of getting the artists are just about the same. I think the only difference is that, we have to, I think at the Millwald, we have to push a little bit hard. The Blumenthal is such an established icon, right, in the regional presenting world. And Millwald, right. I still think of us as a new business.
Right.
It's funny, sometimes I say that the Millwald, I feel like, is like a teenager who's growing out of their clothes, but they're not quite, we're a growing organization. And so agents are starting to pitch us more. One of the things that I found is that I'm always pushing to do more. And so, for example, with Colin Mockery, that budget would not have worked at the Millwald. It just wouldn't. But the goal is, how do we get someone like Colin Mockery to really elevate what we're doing at the Millwald? So that way, it's not just a venue where you're seeing, Donnie Bales' Friendship Band or something,
Right.
And those are great too. But how do we elevate the theater to a place where it's something that the community can be really proud of? And then we start to get really creative. We've been very fortunate in this community to have something like the With Bland Foundation that funds programming events and educational events. And, I'll say that has contributed to a lot of our success in terms of getting people. This community has really stepped up in terms of sponsorships on how to get artists. And that's been able to elevate us to what I think is that Blumenthal level. For example, we have the orchestra coming up this fall, which is all former members of the Electric Light Orchestra, and that's something that if they didn't book it, I'm not sure Blumenthal was at least looking at that. And
Right.
so we're starting to get a lot of those similar artists. And our hope is, maybe we can continue to rent something like the Park. And there's a really long way of answering your question, but essentially. Fun. At the beginning, yes, it was an adjustment, but we're really getting creative to get it to that level. And we want something that the entire community can be proud of, and be proud of the fact that you can go see Colin Mockery right in your backyard. Yes, and I think that goes to what I was saying with now that I really think sometimes if you can just get some artists in there and start to work with different agents and things, they see the success, right? And so they'll start pitching you, and then you get bigger and bigger artists. And I think it's really important. I typically will travel twice a year to big conferences where you can go meet agents and figure out, what do we want to bring back to the Millwald.